Hello! Welcome to this week's episode of Why Not Both, brought to you by Under the Radar magazine and produced by Laura Studeris. My name is Pam Schaefer, and I'm your host. I'm a musician and therapist living in Los Angeles. Why Not Both is all about how our multiple passions inform our identity. And this week we got to interview Bethany Cosentino of Best Coast, which was so much fun. She's got a new album coming out, so I hope that you tune into that. We've got some links to it in the description of this podcast. If you like what you hear, please make sure to like us and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. You can also join us on social media. We are under WNB the podcast on Instagram as well as on Twitter. I really hope you enjoy this week's interview. And welcome to Why Not Both? So,
Thanks.
yeah. I used to always ask, like, what do you do as my first question? And then I was like, I should just start off with asking people, like, what's a better question to ask them, what do you do? Because everyone asks that question.
I don't know. Want to ask me what my favorite meal at the Cheesecake Factory is?
Oh my God.
No one's ever asked me that before. I'd love to tell you.
What's your favorite meal at the Cheesecake Factory?
Okay, so I have a trick. The Cheesecake Factory, here's the thing about Cheesecake Factory. It's not that good. It's just like fun to go there. It's more about like the experience. But the food is not that good, and it's very expensive for like what it is. So I have developed a trick in which you get the same amount of food as you would get if you ordered like a regular entree, but for half the price. And basically I ordered the side of macaroni and cheese and then the smallest Caesar salad. And trust me, it's enough food and it's half the price. So there you go. Budget tips from Best Coast.
Oh my goodness. That is hilarious because I'll never forget like growing up here, going to the Cheesecake Factory the first time because everyone like hypes up the Cheesecake Factory. And I was like, this feels like the Las Vegas of cheesecakes.
Exactly. It's like, it's not good, but there's something about the ambiance and like the vibe. It's just like chain restaurants to me are very soothing. And that one in particular is like, they're all, because I think the thing about chains that's so soothing is that they're always the same. And it's like, there's just like stability in it. So when you go, you like know what to expect. So it's like you can go to a Cheesecake Factory anywhere in the United States and you just feel like I'm at the Cheesecake Factory. But I've like recently realized like the food isn't good. I don't know why I spend like $30 on a meal here. It's not worth it. So then my friend, who's also very budget conscious, she's the one that told me about that. And then I was like, oh wow, that's the literal number one trick to Cheesecake Factory is order the sides.
Oh my God.
And you're good to go.
Basically, I should just go with an entire box of Lactaid and just like get wild.
Yeah, get your probiotics and your digestive enzymes in and then hit the sides menu.
Oh my God, that's genius. Until I was probably I would say like my late 20s, I definitely would just order off the kids menu everywhere because it was cheaper.
Oh yeah.
And I was just like, I can pull this off. I'm 5 feet tall. Like people just think maybe I'm like a child with a hormone problem.
I order the kids menu at the movies. I just ask for the kids meal, and they've never told me no. I'm like always like I'm gonna get the one like curmudgeon who's just like you're not a child. But every time I'm like, can I get the kids menu, like the kids meal? They're like, sure. What do you like? What drink do you want? I'm just like sick.
I kind of want to encounter that person that says you're not a child, so I can just look at them and I'm like, am I not?
Yeah, you're like, but I am though.
Like 100% deadpan because who's going to question you?
Yeah, it's true. So true.
Get that unhinged woman a child's meal just right now. So now that everyone knows the life hacks of Cheesecake Factory, it's funny because I'm so glad you launched like right into that because the whole conceit of the podcast is that everyone thinks that you should have this like one passion in life and that's like the only thing you do. And I was like, no, I want to start a podcast where we talk about the fact that we're all passionate about multiple things.
Yeah. Like doing only one thing sounds so boring to me. I'm like, it's so funny that you say that because I feel like whenever people used to ask me like in interviews, like, well, what are your hobbies? Like, what do you like to do outside of music? I never had an answer. Like, I was always just like, I don't know, like garden. And I never gardened. Like, I literally never knew what to say because I feel like when your job is to be a musician, you're like pretty much always doing music. So it's like, I don't know how to answer that question. And it's like, I feel like I get excited to do things like this now because I'm like, I have a lot of things I like and I have a lot of things I'm passionate about and a lot of things that I can talk about. And
That
one
is
of the,
awesome.
and it's not gardening because guess what? I've tried to garden and I always kill everything. It doesn't work for me.
I somehow killed
So,
a lavender plant, which apparently are very hardy.
yeah.
And I was both like kind of proud of myself and also really sad because I was like, I guess I'm just not that kind of witch. I guess I'm just not. I was like, I was like, I'm gonna get this and feel spiritually connected to the earth, and then it was like your plant's dead, and I was like, well,
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to keep. Yeah, I'm the same way. I have a lemon tree at my house, and I'm somehow still like seems pretty normal. Like it's a bit massive tree, and it just grows from the ground. But somehow I like look at it every day, and I'm like, this doesn't look right. I think I'm not doing this right. And then I'm like, I think I'm just supposed to pick it. And then I like bring the lemons inside, and then they're like rotting on my counter, and I'm just like, Beth, you need to figure out how to be in touch with nature.
You're like, shouldn't I be making these into some sort of like elaborate like jam
I know,
puree?
I know. And then I'm like, should I do the master cleanse? I'm like, fuck that. I don't want to do that. Like,
That's
I just feel
hilarious.
like I think I'm just gonna do the like classic neighborhood thing where I like put them in a basket and like put it outside and say like free so that my
Free
neighbors can just like
lemons.
yeah, or like for Christmas show up and just be like, hi everybody, here's your gift. It's just like a bag of
So aside from like
lemons.
definitely not gardening, what have you been up to?
I have just been, well, we're getting ready to like put a record out next year and
Mm-hmm.
tour and all that. So I'm kind of like, I've been pretty busy like work wise, but I've been doing a lot of, I basically when I'm not touring, I work from home. So I just bought a house like a couple months ago. I bought a new house and I'm like,
Yay!
really, thank you. I'm like settling into that. And I've been doing a lot of like, not necessarily home renovations, but like I've been doing a lot of like I go to Home Goods constantly and I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that'll look good in my house. And so I've been doing a lot of like redecorating and getting very into like interior design and following like interior design people on Instagram and been like I've been getting really into that
Well, that's so
that
much fun
side
to
of
get to
my
like,
personality.
yeah, to design
Yeah,
your own
it's
space.
cool.
That's so wonderful.
No, it's really cool. And I also like I've lived in a bunch of different houses within the last 10 years, but like this house that I just bought feels very me. Like I feel like all the other houses I had were very like it just nothing really ever felt like it matched my like energy
Mm.
and me as a person. And this house is very like it's very modest, it's very small, it's like old, it's an old house, but they definitely like came in and like redid certain things, but it has like a soul and a personality. So I've been really into my
Oh,
house and really into like I have a front porch and I like went out and bought like Christmas decorations and like put them up and I'm also very into estate sales. I go to like a lot of estate
yes.
sales and I'm always dude, I'm on like an email list. I'm like full blown like I go to there's this couple that does these estate sales and I'm on their email list and my one of my best friends and
Oh
I like
my
we
God.
always go and they like see it, they're like, girls, you're back. We're like, here we are, like guys.
I literally like put my hands together like Mr. Burns. I was like, oh my
Yeah,
God,
it's
this is
the
so
it's
exciting.
the best. When I was a kid, my mom used to take me to estate sales, and I remember like when I found out what an estate sale was, I was like, oh, this is scary. Like I didn't like the idea of being in someone's home who had recently passed away and like buying their things. I was like, Mom, why would you take me here? This is so freaky. And now it's like I wake up like on Saturday, this past Saturday, I was up at like 8 a.m. in the car on my way to an estate sale. And I was like, if you had told me this at 24 years old, like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
when you turn 33, you're going to start going to estate sales at 8 a.m. I would have been like, you're insane. I'm never doing that. And now it's like, I get the sickest stuff at estate sales. Seriously. And having a new house, it's like, I've just been slowly kind of like, and it's not like I'm buying massive furniture or anything.
Right.
I'm buying a lot of like sort of like cute little knick-knacky thing or art, or I just bought this, I bought this like really cool, like, this is like to show you that I'm like fully leaning into that portion of my age where I'm just like, I'm just, like a normal lady now. Like I bought like a bundle of sticks and a vase and like put the sticks in a vase. And the woman at the estate sale was like, she sort of pushed the sticks on me because
she's
I found
like, these
this,
are
like,
for you.
yeah, she was like, I found this other thing that was like a little milk carton, like a glass milk container that had these other sort of sticks in it. And I was like, oh, this is really cute. I want to put this on my dresser. And she's like, oh, you like those? Follow me. And then she takes me into this other like secret part of the house. And she's like, here, take this. Like, I'll give you this bundle of sticks and that bundle of sticks for $3. I was like, I can't pass that up.
You're
and
like,
then I
oh
came
my
home
God,
and
of
was
course.
just like, I was just like, I'm literally my mom. Like my mom used to have bundles of sticks and vases when I was a kid. And I'm just like, all right, this is who I am now. Like I just have
You're
sticks in the
stepping
corner
into your
of
power as a woman in her 30s with bundles of sticks and boxes.
Listen, I'm happy to be here. It feels nice to just get a bunch of sticks for $3 and to spend not a lot of money at the Cheesecake Factory. I'm just like, fuck it, man. I'm living my life.
Living your best life. No, that is amazing.
Exactly.
I was actually going to ask you what your favorite stuff was, because like I think that people, in a way, when you were saying like that's really freaky going to estate sales, I was like, I actually like kind of when you, wow, that was going to sound so woo LA. Like when you're in a place where someone clearly has had their treasured objects and their home, and they have everything set up. If you're feeling the same energy where you're like, I would really like this vase or this end table or like whatever the object is, I think that's really lovely that then like you can transfer it to you and then you put your energy in your home and you enjoy it. And so
I agree with you. I think it's really, I think when I was a kid, it just sounded really freaky. And I think now it's like, there's something really like, yeah, I'm going to sound woo LA too. It's like, there's something really like beautiful and spiritual about that. And like going in and just clearing out this person's home and like finding the items that you like. And a lot of times too, like, because some of these estate sales I go to are so next level. Like these houses are massive and they're decorated so crazy. And you're just like, what the hell? And it's so, it's like cool to like, okay, so I went to a really cool estate sale, like, I don't know, probably 6 months ago. That was the woman that wrote The Love Boat.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And she was like an astrologer and she lived in Glendale, which is where I live and where I grew up. And so I like was so stoked to go to this like old 70s, like mid-century, like Glendale mansion. And so she had all these astrology books and like, so for me, that was really cool because that's the sort of shit that I'm into. So it was really cool to like go to this woman's house and like look through all her books, and she had written like notes in the books. And
oh wow.
And yeah, it's really fucking cool. Like as a kid, buying a dead person's stuff seems really scary. As a woman in my 30s who like wants to put sticks in the corner, I'm like, this is the coolest shit ever.
I feel like we've ascended because I remember as a teenager, like going to, I don't know if you ever went to Hidden Treasures in Topanga, but that was like, that was the first vintage store I think that I ever went to. And I remember my mom saying to me, those are probably dead people's things. And even at 14, I was like, well, I guess that's cool. Like I was like, now they're my things. And now like as one of my things, I'm like, yes, our power, it grows.
It's true. It's so true. And just another budget tip, because I'm like the queen, I'm like obsessed with savings. If you go, usually estate sales are 2 days. If you go the second day, everything is half off. And
because they want to get rid of everything.
They just want to get rid of it. And it's like a lot of times you go on the second day and it's like there's still really good stuff, but it's like a lot of the like the best shit has been taken already. But you go on the second day and it's like, my friend just got this couch that's like this old, like, I don't even know how to explain it or what style it is, but it's covered in like dogs and it's like so cool. And they sold it to her for $25.
I'm literally looking at my fainting couch I got for $20 at an estate sale, and I'm like, I feel your vibe. I'm like,
she was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this couch. I was like, you can't say no. It's $25.
It's a $25 dog couch.
$25. You figure out what to do with it. you buy the $25 half off estate sale couch. There's no question.
Well, and also like
So
with stuff like that, you say yes, and then you figure it out later. Like that's kind of my theory in life is when someone presents you with an opportunity, you say yes, and then you're like, now I'm
Yeah,
going to sort out
you
how to
figure out
do
how to
it.
make it work. Totally, totally. Everything always works out in the end, the way that it's supposed to. So yeah, you buy the couch, you figure it out.
That is so funny. I'm like, I'm so excited for you that you get your own home because especially with traveling and touring and living in different places, like I think that
Yeah.
people underestimate how disorienting that is.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's really intense, and it's like I feel very lucky that I was able to get this house and get it set up, for the most part. There's some things I would like to do, but I can do them later. To get it set up so that when I leave next year, because I would say 2020, I'll probably spend the majority of the time touring, with, small periods of being home in between. But it's nice that I got it set up as much as I could so that I have a home base that I feel comfortable in so that when I do get off of tour, I can come home and be like, oh yeah, here I am in my stuff in a house that actually I feel very connected to. And, yeah, it's just really, really cool to like also care a lot about my house because as I said, like I've owned other homes before and I've had other houses, but I feel like I was just never really in a place where I cared that much about what it looked like, or
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really I didn't necessarily have an aesthetic or a style that I wanted. And so I would just kind of like buy random things and put them in places. And I think with this house, it's like I have a vision for it. And so working on my house has been really cool. And it's also like really empowering to look around and be like, I fucking worked so hard for this house. I worked so
Yes.
hard for everything in it. And I've like been through a lot, and I'm really proud of myself that I can like sit in my little kitchen nook with the sunshine and my cup of coffee and just be like, you did this,
Exactly.
It's cool.
Listening to the songs on it, a lot of it sounded like you almost kind of like writing that reality into being. Like you're like, all right, I'm going to write these songs about what this reality is going to be.
Yeah.
And then you crafted that reality. And I was like, that's cool that you were able to kind of dovetail.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That's really cool. You picked up on that. I literally like the lead single off the record, Everything Has Changed, which, by the time this comes out, will have already been out, but it's not out yet. We like when I wrote that song, like I wrote it about a life that I didn't have yet, and literally nothing in my life had changed. Everything was the same, like Groundhog's Day every fucking day. But I wrote this song that I was like, this is what I want my life to look like one day, and hopefully it does. And I didn't even like sit down and do that. I wasn't even like, oh, I'm going to write a song about what I want life to look like. It was just like,
Mm-hmm.
it just came out of me naturally. And looking back on it now, because that song is also like probably like 3 years old. I wrote it a while ago. And
Mm-hmm.
looking back on it now, I listen to the lyrics and I see it and I'm just like, dude, I'm a witch. Like I fully made that happen. Like I read The Secret. I made it happen. I really feel like the last several years of my life have been all about me getting in tune with myself and just
Mm-hmm.
learning that like what I used to think was so cheesy when people would say like, you say it enough times, it just happens, or, what you put into the universe, you get back. I used to roll my eyes so hard at that. It's like, I
Mm-hmm.
really believe in that stuff now because I see myself as a prime example of like that shit works because my life a few years ago looked nothing like it looks like now. And I think I'm a really like good example of what can happen when you really, really just work on yourself. So aside from like working on my home, I've also been heavily working on myself and just like really tending to myself
Mm-hmm.
in a way in which
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how to do, up until a few years ago. So it does. I think that's also part of why this house to me feels really like why I feel very connected to it because I'm like, this is the first home I've ever lived in where I was in a really good place, like mentally, physically, spiritually, like all that stuff.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
sounds
really
like
cool.
it sounds like it's almost like mirroring your internal process that like this house is kind of like
Totally.
showing, oh, this is what you did over the last few years internally, and now you can see it externalized. So then also when you're home from
Yeah,
tour, you can be reminded of like, oh yeah, this is who I am. This is what I built. Like,
totally.
and
Totally. Yeah.
that's really cool because especially I was thinking about there were several other female artists that I've interviewed where it's all about kind of taking control of your own narrative instead of the narrative that other
Uh-huh.
people are writing for you.
Totally.
And it sounds like you were like, okay, no, like I'm steering the ship now.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that too has to do with the fact that like I started this band. I was 22 years old when I started this band, and I was just like, I didn't know this band was going to be a thing. I didn't know this band would afford me to be able to like own a home ever. Like I had no idea. Like I was just like, I'm just like throwing shit out there and seeing what sticks, and it stuck. And I think like when you go from like just being like a very confused, very angsty, like young girl who's writing music, who all of a sudden is like transported into this lifestyle of like, you're on the road all the time, you're doing late night television, you're being interviewed, your relationship is in the public eye, like people know your cat's name. Like it was just so much shit that I was like, what the hell? Like what? Like
right.
Where did this come from? You know?
And there's no like manual for how to deal with it. You're just like, ugh.
Exactly. Like I had no idea how to just like settle into that portion of my life. And so I think I spent a lot of time trying to just like run away from it. And so I think I always had this attitude of like, I don't give a shit what you think about me, but I actually cared so deeply.
Right.
And I think now, like, I think a lot of it comes with age as well. Like, I'm 33 now. I really don't care what you think of me. Like, I'm happy with myself. I like work incredibly hard on myself. But I also think it's like, I also like, I feel like I finally just feel like I fit in with myself, if that makes any sense. Like I feel like for a long time I was always searching to like fit in. I wanted other people to like, I was an approval seeker. I wanted everybody to tell me how great I was because I didn't know how to tell myself. And now I think I'm finally in a place where I'm just like, I like myself and I like the things that I've accomplished, and I can look at the last 10 years of my life and be like, holy shit, that was a lot. And that was also a lot for a person. That's a lot for anybody, but especially a person who was dealing with like, you know, addiction issues and dealing with mental health stuff and dealing with just like her whole life flipping overnight is what it felt like, you know? So it's like, yeah, I do very much feel like I've reached a place where I'm just like, this is who I am. I'm not going to hide it. And I'm comfortable being this person. And I'm comfortable like making a record that just like says the truth. I've always been an artist that tells the truth, but I think this record really tells the truth in a different way than I ever have before.
And kudos to you for talking about, yay! I was like, first I want to applaud that. I was like, I want to clap, but I'm also like, will it make the sound clip? I'm going to clap like, imagine this is loud. I want to commend you for that, and also for talking about mental health and addiction issues, because I think that within the music community, like we're almost encouraged to be like unhinged and unwell. And I think that it's to our detriment. And I think that everyone talks out about, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe we lost another artist. And it's like, well, it's because you want us to somehow produce a lot of work while being literally like unwell.
Yeah. I mean, yes, it's very, it's really messed up. You know, I think it's also like for me, I didn't really ever think I had a problem. I mean, I knew I was really anxious. I knew I drank too much. I knew I like partied way too hard, but I was always just kind of like, whatever, I'm in my 20s. This is what people do. And then it was kind of like, I sort of like had a moment where I like pulled back the lens a little and like looked at it and was like, no, this is not what people do. And this is not the way I'm supposed to feel. And this is not the way I want to feel. And I think it's like, it's hard because it's like you said, it's like, there's so much expected of artists, and there's this lifestyle in which you literally never stop. And it's like, if you stop, then you have to deal with the idea that like you may go away. People may stop caring about you. People may move on to the next artist that sort of sounds like you, or the next big thing, you know? And it's like, I struggled with that really hard because I almost feel like, again, here I go being very LA woo-woo. Like, I feel like the universe forced me to stop and was like, you are going to take a 5-year break and you're not even going to like intend to do it. It's just going to happen. Because I was just nonstop going. And I developed a lot of really bad habits during that time and a lot of bad coping mechanisms. And I think like truly, like the universe was just like, no, you like it, like it took away my ability to write music. It was just like, you're going to go through some shit and you're going to come out of it on the other side, and you just have to trust the process. And I think looking back on it now, I'm just like, it's incredible that I did that, and like that people still care, because you have to
Oh,
really think about the industry that we live in now. It's just like music is so different than it was when I started, and it's like so much comes out. There's so many artists. There's so much available to us at any given moment. And so I just feel really lucky that like I was able to step away for 5 years and like do what I needed to do, and that I'm coming back, and that people are like, oh, we're excited for you to be back, and we're
yeah.
excited to hear what you have to say, and we're excited to talk to you about your estate sales and all these things. It's like I feel very privileged and like very, very, very grateful that I was able to like carve out a space for myself in this industry that like that allowed me to be this outspoken person, and it allowed me to like really get to know myself. And I
Yeah.
I just was in a work meeting the other day, and I said to somebody, I said like, listen, like for the first time in my life, I finally feel like I deserve to be here. And
Oh,
I think for a long time, like I felt sort of like, oh, I just got lucky. I don't really know why anyone likes my music. And now I look at it and I'm like, I deserve to be here. I worked really hard at this, and I
hmm.
make music. I make music sort of for like the outcast and the outsider. And there's a lot of fucking outcasts and outsiders in the world. So I I do really just feel like I have started a new chapter of my life, and I'm very excited to like share it with the world. And yeah, I'm just like happy to be like where I'm at today. It just feels really nice.
And I love that you're able to like value what you're doing, because I think about what you just said about how like there's so many artists and there's so much out there. Like,
Mhm.
because I didn't realize it was funny. I was like, I'm gonna Google Bethany before interviewing her. I didn't know that you were in Pocahontas, that I used to like see play.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I remember like when you were playing in Pocahontas, like back in that kind of like era of the LA music scene, there were shows like every night, multiple shows, and you'd
Yeah.
end up going to like multiple shows around Echo Park, and like you'd be like, oh, I'm gonna go to
Mhm.
Perispace, and I'm gonna go to the Echo, then I'm gonna go to the Echo Curio, then I'm gonna like at some point
Mhm.
collapse and eat a burrito at Taco Zone.
Yeah.
And like and it's like you're always bouncing around, but now it's almost like the entire world is that, where you could go to a million shows virtually essentially by being like, oh, I'm going to listen to this
Totally.
playlist. Oh, I'm going to hop on this person's Insta. Oh, I'm going to like, and like, it's almost like so saturated now that
Yeah,
people
it
like,
is.
yeah, that people almost
It
kind of take it for granted. And so I'm glad that
it is,
people
yeah.
are paying attention to what you're doing, because I feel like
Thanks.
yeah, it's encouraged this like bouncing aroundness on a grand scale that it's almost baffling to me that I'm like, how have we thrown this much information at ourselves? Are we supposed to be able to process this much information?
It's it's so crazy. It's like really, I get overwhelmed all the time. Like even just for me, like I was talking about how when I'm not on tour, I'm like working from home. And what I mean by that is like
Yeah.
I'm opening my computer and I have like 40 emails from like manager, publicist, label, like all these people being like, hey, approve this thing, hey, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, I can barely even get through that. And then I think about like the amount of content that's being thrown at me, like TV. Honestly, like I gotta say, like the TV show thing, that is that's where I'm just like, dude, we gotta stop making TV shows. Like, there's too many. Every person I know is like, have you watched this yet? Have you watched that? Oh, new season of this is out. I'm like, when am I supposed to do that? I don't have time. Like, it's so intense. It's
Yes.
so
And now that we have all the
intense.
different streaming things where it's like now
It's
like
just,
everything has a new
it's
streaming thing. And after a while
nuts.
I'm like, do we all have to band together in some sort of like
It's
polyamorous
nuts.
streaming password sharing crew?
I
Where it's
know.
like
It's just like, it's so crazy. Like everybody's just like, yeah. And I mean, like, I think it's great because I do think like a lot of wonderful art is being created. Like there's a lot of trash, but there's also a lot of really good stuff coming out, not just in TV, but films and, writing and music. Like there's so much good stuff. And I feel like the decade in which we're living, and especially given the current state of like the political climate, like I think it's really making people want to create, because
yes.
the world does at times feel very hopeless, and it sort of does feel sometimes like, well, the world is burning, what does it matter? But then at the same time, it's like, let's just keep fucking putting good shit out and doing good stuff, because there is at times, I mean, at least I know for myself, I can speak for myself. Like, I do feel a glimmer of hope, like 90% of the time. I do think, like, yes, the world is so scary right now, but there's also like so much good that continues to happen. And I do feel like people
Yes.
are really like activated, not just politically, but also creatively within this time. So it's really cool to see how much shit is being churned out. But at the same time, as a person who like can really only handle like 5 things a day, like I'm just like, oh my God, how am I supposed to watch the second season of Fleabag when I'm also trying to watch Killing Eve and I'm also trying to watch like Succession and it's just like, whoa.
You're like, oh
And
my
answer
God.
my emails and go to my estate sales. I'm just like, how do I do it all?
I mean, my only life hack is that I have a whiteboard. That's like literally, if I didn't have my
That's so
whiteboard,
smart.
I like wouldn't know what I was doing. I think that like externalizing a to-do list, or at least like kind of a bullet point of big goals that way, because trying to hold it all in your head, my head's like, I'm
Oh
sorry, I'm
no,
like
it
a
doesn't.
leaky pasta strainer. It's gonna like
Exactly. It's 100%. Yeah. It's like, and that's the way I used to navigate life always. Like I would just wake up and be like, okay, like I have to do this today. I have to do this today. And like none of it would get done. And
uh-huh.
now I'm like, I'm still working on like, because there are some days where I wake up and I'm like, oh, just remember you have to do that. But when I make lists for myself, that's when shit actually gets done, you know? And I think it's
Exactly.
like, that is just in going with the idea of what I was saying, that like there is so much content, it's like that is also partially the thing that does give me that glimmer of hope 90% of the time, because you
Yes.
see a lot of the stuff that's coming out and a lot of it is like really great and it's being made by like people that need to be telling their stories. And I just feel like we're in a weird pivotal moment in history where like it's been really bad and it could continue to be really bad. But I also feel like people are sort of like waking up in this way where it's like, hi, I have something to say. I'm going to say it and I'm not going to apologize. I mean, you look at like the biggest names in like pop music right now, and you're
Mm-hmm.
just like, that speaks for itself. Like a
Yep.
17-year-old with that wears crazy clothes with green hair, you
Yep.
know, like is the biggest pop star in the world. And you see that and you're just like, this is amazing. Like
Yeah, you're like, I
the
think we're
world,
going good places. Like, I agree.
exactly. It's like the
Go on.
world feels like a dumpster fire, but you look at culture and you look at art and you look at what's happening in that regard and you're like, wow, we're making progress. It's really cool.
Well, and I feel like what you said, it's so interesting that you tied together like hope and also art and creation, because I think that honestly, it would be hopeless if people weren't creating art, is how I see it, where it's like if people were just
Oh,
defeated in a way and
100%.
like not
Yeah.
putting anything out, that's when I would like really start to,
No, totally.
it's almost like it's like as long as you have gallows humor about things, like you're still not dead yet.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, totally.
like,
It's
and
so true.
seeing like I agree with you, of seeing the art that's becoming popular and is becoming kind of like almost like global mass media, it does give me faith in kind of what's going to happen, because I was like, okay, things are cyclical. That means that like if things are really bad, they might hit like rock bottom, but then they have to
Yeah,
cycle back to good again. It's kind of
it's
like
so true.
you have to, things come in cycles. And so
Yeah,
whenever I think that way, I'm
absolutely.
like, okay, I'm like, you just got to ride out the bad parts and accept that they're there.
Mhm.
Cruise back in. It's like,
I know.
yeah, I find like laws of physics very comforting, like that matter and energy are constant. I'm like, all right, it's either going to be matter or energy. Like, you're not going to lose any. They just might shift forward.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
things that calm my anxiety. Laws of physics.
Whatever works, whatever works.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, like that was funny what you said about like all the different TV. And I feel like also that people sometimes trivialize TV culture and even music culture sometimes. Like people sometimes trivialize interest in the arts, despite the fact that I don't think people would like the world very much without them.
No, totally. Well, I think it's also like, you know, it's so interesting because I think now that streaming is such a thing, there were always those people that were like, kill your television and like very anti-media in that way. And it's like this idea of streaming and the way in which television and network television especially has changed has like really opened it up to a lot of like intellectual thinkers and people that steered clear of TV for a long time because they felt like it was that, that very like, I mean, I've never been one of those people. Like, I literally was raised by television. Like, my family ate dinner in front of the TV. So I've always been like, I love TV. It's the best. But it's really cool to see, like, what these platforms are doing and the people, like I said, the people that they're giving voices to and the stories that they're telling. And it's cool because there's literally something out there for everyone now. There really is. Like, my dad the other day was talking about, he asked me, he's like, have you watched Fleabag? I was like, yeah, I love it. Did you watch it? And he's like, no, I was thinking of it. And I was like, I don't think you'll like it, but maybe give it a shot. Like, I don't know. It's like, it's just really cool that there's a lot of people that are like interested in exploring the culture and the art that's being created right now, because it is like a show like Fleabag is like basically it's a mainstream show now, and it's a story that like a lot of people would be like, what? Like if that you know what I'm saying, but it's
oh
like,
my God. I was gonna say I can't spoil it just in case someone listening hasn't watched it, but I'm like, oh my God, the second season. I mean, the first season was great,
so
but
good.
The second season I was like,
so good. I know, so good. But yeah, to what you were saying, it's like, it's so true. It's like, I feel like when Trump became president, I think we all kind of had a fear of like, what the fuck is going to happen? And also like, are people just going to become so defeated that they just stop making art? And I remember like when he got elected, like some person tweeted something at me and was like, whatever, like, people make the best art in times like this. Like, remember when Bush was president? And I'm like, I don't want to think about that right now. Like, how could you try to find a glimmer of hope in this? There isn't one, But looking back on it, I'm like, a lot of bad things happen. A lot of like bigotry and horrible shit was exposed. But it's also like, you look at the art that has been created and the people who have catapulted to the top in terms of art and culture. And it's just like, it is so sick to see what America has done with this horrible dumpster fire we were presented with in terms of art and culture. Like you can't argue it. It's been really incredible to watch.
Well, and I feel like, I mean, it's interesting that you say that, because I was trying to explain to last I was in Reykjavik, my friends were like, so can you explain your country to us? And I was like, haha, no. I wish. I feel like the political situation has revealed kind of like the deep fractures in the country, but also it's like, well, once you reveal what the problem is, that's the only way to start solving it through, I think, like art and communication and through knowledge. Like that's how things are going to get mended. And so I'm really glad that people are creating things and speaking out. And because of some things like kind of subterranean and unspoken, you're like, is it a problem? And now looking at it, you're like,
exactly,
oh, it's a big problem. It is a problem that is a trash can on fire rolling down a hill. Watch out for the flaming trash can.
Totally, yeah.
And so
as long as I'm like doing that cheesy mom thing where I'm like, if we can survive this, we can survive anything. And then you look back on history and you're like, we've survived a lot of horrible things. So, it's like, that's really where I try to see it. And I just try to see like, yeah, it's bad, but it's also, like I said, I try to like, for me, it's like the thing in which I've learned to sort of help me just in life in general is to sort of like always find the good in any situation. And sure, there's not good in every situation, but it's like, for me, the thing that I've focused on the most throughout this whole like Trump being president and all of this shit that's like happened in the world since then is like I said, the art and the culture and the things that have happened through that. And because of that, and the people that is really put like right in the forefront of just what we're doing, like that's where I see it. And I'm just like, I'm just stoked on how much good shit has happened, like in terms of media and things like that. So,
and it seems like you also like chose to kind of put on your own oxygen mask in a way where it's like, put on your own and then help other people. It sounds like you're like,
absolutely.
You're like, well, shit's really hit the fan, so I'm going to take care of myself.
Exactly. Oh my God, seriously. Like, I feel like when No, totally. Like, and I think that was something I neglected for a really long time. Like, it's like I was saying, I was always a little bit afraid that if I stopped, people would stop caring and the next best thing would come along and the next, the next, like, I don't know, like, it's just like, there's just so much stuff happening all the time that I was like, why would anybody stick around for me if there was just somebody else that came along and did something similar, you know? So I think
Mm-hmm.
honestly, like, Trump becoming president was really like, that was really, I feel like for me, when I really started to hit a real emotional rock bottom because I was just like, I couldn't believe what had happened. And I was
Right.
just it just really like exposed so much bad and like brought up a lot of really triggering things, especially for women. Like it was just
Yes.
so intense. And I feel like it was so hard to really get through that. And I think that really was like a pivotal moment for me where I was just like, okay, what can I do outside of music? And that was really where it did become a thing where it was like, put your oxygen mask on and like go to yoga and like, go to protests and do the things that like you need to do as just a human being. And like your music needs to be secondary right now. And like it was scary to do that and to push the pause button and just be like, I have to
Mm-hmm.
take care of
Mm-hmm.
myself. But at the end of the day, it's like I'm worth nothing if I'm not healthy or sane. Like, and that's the sad thing is that they really churn so many artists just to the bone. And that's how we
Yes.
lose people because they
Yes.
don't see you, they don't see you as humans and they don't say like, you look like you could use a break, like, go on a vacation. Like no one in the history of the music industry has ever said that.
Right. Or they'll malign
Like,
you for looking tired and you're like, really? Really?
exactly. Or
Like,
it's like, oh, wait, you're going on a vacation? By the way, there's a radio station where you're going. I think we might be able to schedule something. It's like, you need to fuck off and let me live my life. And that's basically what
exactly.
I told everybody. I basically told everyone, fuck off, let me live my life. And everybody was like, okay, you're scary. We're not
No!
gonna push.
Well, and the fact that like I'm so proud of you for standing up for yourself, but also the fact that you had to stand up for yourself just to be a person
Yeah,
outside of music.
I know.
I'm like
It's sad.
that's endemic of what it does. That it's like, and yeah, and when you were talking also about like, wow, I have like four thoughts just collided in my head. Um, I'm like, one, forming an identity outside of your art, because otherwise, how are you going to make art?
Yeah.
And then two, like balancing kind of consumption of other media and then creation of media. Because I think it's really interesting that you took off like several years and that like essentially it sounds like the universe was like, this is the time for you to not write music. This is the time for you to learn
hmm
about yourself and maybe consume some stuff.
Yeah. 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 I mean, yeah, that is pretty much what happened. I mean, I really just sort of became like I was kind of just like an onlooker for a little bit. And I like paid attention to like, you know, music for the first time, like in a very different way. Cause the other thing too is for me, like when I was in the middle of my like, the whirlwind of my career taking off, like I didn't really, it was very hard for me to like listen to other artists that were sort of like within the same ballpark as me. Like it was hard
Mm-hmm.
for me to like listen to some of my peers because I was always comparing myself and always asking like, why don't I get asked to play those festivals? Why don't I play venues that big? Like it was
Right.
always a comparing sort of situation. So at the time I sort of tried to not engage because I was just always finding ways to like put myself down via somebody else's
Mm,
success. And when I kind of took that break and sort of just forced myself to be just like a fan of things for a while, like it was really, really cool. Like it was really cool for me to just like to know that like whatever, I mean, at the time I didn't know that it was happening for a reason. I just think
right.
I was like, I'm cursed. I'm never going to write music again. But in
No.
hindsight, I look back and I'm like, girl, you needed to fucking chill out. I think about some of the I think about some of the artists and the music and the books and the television shows and the movies and things that I like engaged with during that time. And I'm like, it's really cool that I was able to do that and not really criticize myself through that. I was able to just look at people's work and be like, good for them. This is rad. You know what would be really cool to like maybe try to write a song that sounds like that, or I'm really inspired by this person's book of poetry, maybe I should try to write poetry. I wrote poetry in college, like maybe I should try
Yeah.
again. Like it became or sort of this thing for me where it started to like influence me and inspire me, as opposed to what it used to do, which would literally like, I would turn it back on myself and be like, you're a failure. This person's better than you, you know? So,
and it sounds like a return to like inspiration and kind of doing things just for the joy of doing things, because it is so easy to
totally,
compare yourself to other artists, like,
totally.
especially
Yeah.
because everything
Especially,
is in your
yeah,
face. Like,
exactly. Especially now. Trust me. Yes. Especially now. It's like, it's really intense now too, because it's like songs come out and they go to number one, and then they're on SNL and they're doing these things, and I'm like, that's, you know, oh, okay, I've never gotten to do that. But at the same time, it's like I've gotten to do a shit ton of stuff, and I'm really proud of myself, and I'm really excited that, like I said, I was able to like take a step back. I mean, I don't feel like I ever fully went away, because I was still busy doing things, and I was still very much like out there and engaging with people. I think it was also too, like my platform sort of shifted, and I
mm,
started to become more of like a political advocate and a women's rights advocate, and I
right.
started to sort of like explore these different paths that I did when I was putting records out and stuff. But at the same time, like I couldn't really give it my whole full focused attention.
Right.
So it was really cool when I was able to just sort of like step back, and the Daily Show was like, hey, do you want to come on and talk about sexism in the music industry? I was like, actually, I can do that, because I'm home right now, and I can actually go out there and give
Yes.
you my full attention and talk about these topics. And, when Billboard was like, do you want to write a think piece about it? I was like, sure, actually, I can do that, because I'm not busy right now. Like, it was actually just really cool for me to like dip my toe into a different pool, and to like establish myself as an artist who also has a voice in things that exist outside of music. Because I think at the end of the day, like I want to establish myself as a person who like people look at and think like, I care about what she has to say, and she's smart, and she's confident, and she's not just like her music. Because I think for a long time I feel like I only was my music, and I think
Right.
now I've really tried to like grow and expand in this way where I'm like, I have a lot more to say. And I really think that taking that break was necessary in sort of developing that side of myself. So again, it's like that thing where I'm like, I didn't know it at the time, but I look at it in hindsight now, and I'm like, wow, that really happened to me for a reason. Like I really just needed to like hit reset and like change
Mm-hmm.
things up a little bit. And I'm just really very grateful that I'm still around at the dawning of a new decade. It's really, really cool for me to think about like, wow, I've been doing this for 10 years, and I'm about to start a new decade with a new record and a new tour and new things to say and a fresh perspective from, on my own life and the world in general. And it's just like really, really, really cool.
I was like, and that's magical that it ties into also something much bigger than yourself in advocating for other people. Because I love that you were
Hmm.
like, it sounds like for a while it was almost impossible to escape from. And I relate to that for sure. Like almost that self-focus of like, is my art good enough?
Yeah.
Why do people like this?
Yeah.
Are they going to like someone better than me? And it sounds like by turning away from that and being able to advocate not just for yourself, but for other women in the music industry, which is like in a lot of ways reflections of other industries as well.
Yeah.
I was
Totally.
like, that is awesome. I'm like,
Thanks.
it sounds almost like by tuning into what was going on in a broader scope, then you were able to create the album that you're going into the new decade in. And I'm like, that's
Totally.
rad.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, it's like it's also like I see it very much like magic. Like it just all happened exactly how it was supposed to, and it was like I made certain moves, and I went in certain directions, and they led me exactly back to where I needed to be at the exact right time. Because honestly, like this record wouldn't be what it is. It wouldn't have the message it has if I had made it 4 years ago when they wanted me to, when I got off the cycle of the last record. It's like it
right.
wouldn't have been the same thing. It needed to happen exactly the way it happened. And I do feel like within that time of advocating for other people, like it really taught me a lot about myself too. And that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't why I did
Mm-hmm.
it. It wasn't like I was like, I need to go on I need to go on a journey of self via doing these other things. But it
Right.
was like, as I was doing those things, it was exposing things about myself to myself, like while I was in the middle of those kind of intense conversations. And it was also helping me realize like how can I be better, and what can I do to sort of like change these issues? How can I
Yes.
like help, And so I think it taught me a lot about myself to just take that step away and really just like reevaluate life, my industry, myself, my creative process, what other people are doing out there, how other people are dealing with the dumpster fire that
Right.
was the last, 4 years. And so, yeah, it's been a fucking journey. And I'm just really happy to be like, and I won't say to be at the end of it because I know it's like, that's life. It's just going to
Right. It's just
continue
going
to
to keep
change.
going.
And yeah, it's just going to keep happening until it stops happening. But I feel like I've reached a place where I'm like, I'm cool with that. Like I think about death sometimes and it scares the shit out of me. But at the end of the day, it's also like, I've done a lot of really rad stuff and I continue to do rad stuff every day. And I live every single day. Like, am I doing exactly what I wanted to do today? And the answer for the most part is usually yes. And that's really all I can do. And that's all any of us can do.
And that's amazing to be grateful for that. Because when you said like, it's going to keep going until it stops, I was just like,
Yeah.
yeah, right now you get to be matter and you get to put out energy. And then later, maybe you'll
Yeah.
be energy that turns back into matter. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
you're killing it. And I was wondering, like,
Thank
I
you.
guess like as a closing question, like what would you recommend to other people that want to get more into advocacy and also in music as well? Because I was like, both of those are really vital fields, but I think about, especially given the situation we're in, people might be interested in
Yeah.
like, how can they be better advocates? And I was like, oh,
Well, I think like a really big thing to do is just to like find things that you're like, for me, for example, it's like, I'm incredibly passionate about like women's health. I'm very, 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 very passionate about speaking out against sexism in the music industry. It's like, I kind of found two things that I like really, really cared about. And I sort of decided to like research those things and what organizations help those things and how can I help those organizations, whether it's a couple of years ago, I did a benefit show for Planned Parenthood and donated all the proceeds to Planned Parenthood. I like have
awesome.
made T-shirts for Planned Parenthood and sold and given the money to Planned Parenthood. Like, we put out pre-sale tickets for this tour and we donated $1 of every single pre-sale ticket to Planned Parenthood. It's like, I basically just found the things that I felt like I cannot sit back and let this happen with. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel it in my bones when women's health issues get attacked. I'm just like, I will flip a table and punch someone in the face. And it's like, those are not things that I should do. Those are bad for my health. What can I actually do?
You're like, how can
And
I
then I'll like,
metaphorically flip a table?
exactly. And then I'll like, like, the internet is scary and there's so much on it, but it's also like a really great source for just going and looking up things that you care about and how can you help. And for me,
Yes.
I think that has become something that I like will do until the day that I die, is like, how can I help women? How can I help women that need help, that don't have the same platform as me, that can't say, I'm going to put a benefit show together or sell t-shirts for Planned Parenthood. Like, they may not have the same resources that I have. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm going to just do that. And I would suggest that anybody that wants to give back, like, because at the end of the day too, it's like the best way to get out of your own head is to be of service to other people. And if you
Yes.
can just like, and whether that means like volunteering at a Planned Parenthood or even just donating $20 or, going and sitting on a panel, like whatever it is you can do, like that's going to make you feel better to know that you are like giving back in this way.
So it sounds
So
like identifying a cause that you believe in and then figuring out
totally.
a way that you
And
can
then
be of use
figuring
that
out a way.
best matches your
Yeah,
platform. Because you're right, like,
totally.
like I think about one of my friends who worked as like kind of one of the people that escorts people into Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
I admire the heck out of her because I'm like, that is ballsy. Like, especially if you're in a place where people are protesting, and
Totally.
I'm like, those women
Totally.
really appreciate that because it gives them the sense of safety that they need. I'm like, that's badass.
Exactly. And it's like I said, it's like when you're being of service to other people, like you don't have it's like, it's the best way to get out of your head because you literally can't think about yourself when you're walking somebody else into a Planned Parenthood if they may need to go get an abortion. You're not thinking about like, oh, okay, like what do I have to do later? You're literally like, I want to help get this person in there safely and show them that I support them. And that's
Exactly.
literally like the easiest thing. I mean, that's an intense one for some people. Like, some people may not feel like they're like emotionally strong enough to do something like that, and that's okay. But it's
Exactly.
like, just being of help to somebody else or to an organization that you care about or a cause you care about, like allows you to just be in that moment when you're doing that and not think so much about like, oh fuck, I like have to go to the grocery store later. It's like you're not thinking
Right.
about Trader Joe's when you're advocating for women's rights, like you're not. It just
Exactly.
those two
Exactly.
things
You're not
don't
like, which trail
coincide.
mix should I get? Like,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then in terms of like music, it's like I think if you really like the internet is a blessing and a curse in a way where it's like there's so much on it, but there's also so many ways in which you can get your shit out there now. And so it's like whether it's like you create a SoundCloud for yourself or you figure out how to put your music on Spotify or you like organize a local show in your area. Like I think if you're really passionate about what you're doing, like you can always find a way to make it happen. I think it's just like people's definition of success is like, I want to be the biggest star in the world. And it's like, you have to lower your expectations. Like, you
right.
can't come in guns blaring, like, I'm going to be the next Katy Perry. It's like, that's a really hard goal to achieve. I
And
think if
also,
you're just
yeah.
like, it's like, for me, I think that at the end of the day, like that's really why all of this happened for me. Because when I started Best Coast, I was just like, oh, okay, I hope this works. Don't really know what's gonna happen. And I didn't like walk in and say like, I'm making this happen. I think the best things in life happen when you least expect them and when you just let the universe work exactly the way that it's supposed to. And I know that's like a really kind of a cheesy thing to say. And there's a lot of people that will probably hear that and be like, wait, what? Like, how do you do that? But it's like, I think it's like, if you care about what you're doing enough, just keep doing it and something will happen. And that definition of success that you think, okay, like my goal is to be on, the Ellen DeGeneres show. It's like, again, really big goal. Like, why don't you just put it out there and see if like 4 people like it? And that can be your
Yes.
definition of success. It's like, you're the only person that can define what success looks like and define what true happiness looks like for you. So it's like, I think a good lesson in that is really for ourselves to just figure out like, what does that definition of success look like? And how can I achieve that on like a smaller scale,
Yeah.
cause
And knowing that
believe me,
every part leads
I've
up to
been the
that
same
too.
way. Yeah, exactly, exactly. I've been the exact same way before where I'm like watching the Grammys and I'm like, that should be me. And then I'm like, that's a huge one. It's like,
Yes.
if that's meant to happen, like it'll fucking happen someday. Like just focus on all the other shit you're doing and think about all the other stuff that you've done. And, it's like our egos are really good at telling us some crazy shit, So I think as long as you care about what you're doing enough, like you'll make it happen in one way or another. It just may not look the version that you like think it's supposed to in your head. But as long as you're doing something with it, if you care about it that much, then that's something to like really applaud yourself for.
Yeah, like to get to the Grammys, you have to make music. Like you have to just
Yeah,
do the
exactly.
thing. And
Exactly.
so it's like I love what you said about like that our egos will trick us, and I was like 110%. It's
Yeah.
like if
Yeah.
you're not just engaged in what you're doing, like if you're too focused on the end goal, you're gonna kind of miss the process.
Of course. Of course.
Like,
It's so true.
and
So
so
true.
having it in the back of your mind, like, yeah, I'm gonna like what's that phrase that like I feel like it's probably crocheted on a pillow somewhere, like shoot for the moon, land in the stars.
Oh
Like,
yeah, 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 yeah. My friend just said that to me the other night, and I was like, oh my god, I love how I'm obsessed with cheesy quotes like that. I literally am like, I love it. I literally have a "Let Go, Let God" sticker on my refrigerator, and I'm just like, yep, here I am.
yep.
This is me. Who
You're
gives
like,
a
I've
shit?
arrived. I've arrived. Carve it on a stone. I'll put it on my patio.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, because I think that definition of success, and also in today's like music climate, you can succeed in so many different ways by
Totally.
so many different metrics
Mhm.
that like I think of all of my friends, and like all of us have in a way I guess like quote succeeded in completely different ways.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
and
know. My
like
My best friend is like a PhD student, and she's like, you know, we couldn't be more different. Our jobs couldn't be more different. But it's like, she'll tell me, she'll be like so excited that she got a grant. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like, that's a huge success for you, you
Yes.
know? And it's like, we're all succeeding. Like, everybody is doing something that matters and that takes them one step ahead, like every day, you know? It's like, and whether that thing is, especially for people that are really struggling, like whether that thing is like you literally got up and you showered first thing in the
Mm-hmm.
morning, like that's a success. And I think
Yes.
it's really about acknowledging those things within ourselves and acknowledging the idea that like we're trying as best as we can. Because I think when you just float through life like I'm a fucking loser, I'm a failure, like then unfortunately that's what it's going to look like for you. And I know that I can say that, I can speak truth to that, because that's how I spent a large portion of my life this last decade, was
Mm-hmm.
sulking my way through life and being like, oh God, I'm pathetic. And that's how I felt. And as soon as my perspective shifted, it really, I saw a huge transformation in myself, you know, and I still struggle with it. I'm a human being. I have a brain, I have an ego, I have all the things that like want to get in the way. But I've like have learned how to better just harness it back and be like, no, you're good. You're good, girl. Like you're doing the
Right.
best that you can.
Right. And
So yeah,
it sounds like acknowledging, there are forces around you that might be institutional that are kind of like keeping you down,
sure,
like how you've been addressing sexism in the music industry. But it sounds
sure,
like
sure.
you're saying, hey, like don't focus on feeling down on yourself because it will blind you in a way to the success that you're having
Totally.
and the joy that you're
Yeah, for
having and
sure.
like all these good things that are happening if you're like, you know, just keep your eyes open to that. Like,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
You don't have to be
Yeah.
Pollyanna and be like, "Everything's great," but, like,
I know, no,
be
because
open
that's
to
a
the
whole
idea.
other, yeah,
Yeah.
being Pollyanna is a whole other bad thing, you know?
Yeah, like, when I see all those signs that are like, "Good vibes only," I'm like, "No, there's also bad vibes," and, like,
Yeah.
that's okay, but, like, keep your eyes open for the
Yeah.
good ones.
Yeah,
Like
totally. Totally.
oh my
So
goodness.
true.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on Why Not Both.
Of
I really
course.
appreciate all
Thank
your
you.
time.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Oh. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Why Not Both, brought to you by Under the Radar. Under the Radar is a nationally distributed print, music, and entertainment magazine and website. You can find them at www.undertheradarmag.com and feel free to support them on Patreon. They are at patreon.com/under_the_radar. Thank you again to our producer, Laura Studeris, as well as to our guest, Bethany Cosentino. If you like what you hear, please make sure to subscribe to us so you don't miss any episodes, and come hang out with us on Instagram and Twitter at WNB the podcast. Hope you have an amazing week, and I'll see you next Wednesday.